There is a quantum state that collapses reality instantly, and it is not created through effort, practice, or repetition. It is not achieved by learning more, visualizing harder, or refining technique. It exists prior to all of that. It is a state of internal coherence where nothing is being asked of reality because nothing feels missing. In this state, the field does not wait. It responds immediately, because there is no contradiction in the signal you are broadcasting. Reality does not respond to words. It does not respond to desire. It responds to being. When your inner state stabilizes into certainty without tension, the field has no alternative but to reorganize. This is not because you are influencing something external. It is because there was never anything external to begin with. Reality is a mirror, and mirrors do not negotiate. They reflect. This quantum state is not excitement. It is not hope. It is not belief. It is a calm recognition that something is already done at the level that matters. When this recognition clicks, time collapses. The delay you once experienced was never caused by external obstacles. It was caused by internal fragmentation. Competing signals. Wanting and doubting at the same time. Asking while scanning for proof. The moment that fragmentation dissolves, the timeline snaps into place. You do not enter this state by trying to feel differently. You enter it by stopping the attempt to become. Readiness is not something you move toward. It is something you notice when resistance drops away. The mind has been trained to associate readiness with preparation, but the field recognizes readiness as coherence. When your inner world stops arguing with itself, the outer world has no choice but to follow. This is why some changes appear instant and others feel delayed. The difference is not importance or worthiness. The difference is signal clarity. When your identity quietly accepts something as inevitable without emotional charge, the field reads that acceptance as selection. Not hope. Not intention. Selection. And selection collapses probability. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not missing a step. The quantum state that collapses reality is available only now, because it exists only in the present moment. The present is not a slice of time. It is the point where identity and reality meet. When you are fully here without reaching forward or pulling back, the field reorganizes around you naturally. Nothing needs to be forced. Forcing creates resistance. Wanting creates distance. Recognition creates alignment. This is the law. The moment you stop trying to make reality respond, you become the state it has been waiting to reflect. That is why this feels familiar. Not new. Remembered. If you are aligned with this frequency, subscribe and remain within it. Reality responds before thought because thought is not the origin of your signal. Thought is an echo. It is a surface-level translation of something that has already been broadcast at a deeper level. Before a word forms, before an image appears, before an intention is articulated, there is a state. That state is what the field reads. Everything else is commentary. The field does not interpret language. It does not decode affirmations. It does not wait for clarity of wording. It responds to coherence. Coherence is the internal agreement between what you feel, what you expect, and who you are being in the moment. When those elements are aligned, reality moves without delay. When they are fragmented, thought tries to compensate, and delay appears. Emotion is not a reaction to reality. It is an instruction to it. This is not because emotion is dramatic or intense, but because emotion carries frequency. Frequency is information. The field is informational. It responds to vibration the way a tuning fork responds to sound. Automatically. Instantly. Without interpretation. This is why reality often reorganizes before you can explain why. The explanation comes after the shift, not before it. Visualization and verbal intention were never meant to persuade reality. They were meant to help you notice your state. When they work, it is not because the images were clear or the words were correct. It is because, for a moment, they brought your inner world into alignment. But the alignment is the cause. The technique is incidental. Thought is slow because it is sequential. It moves in steps. Reality is not sequential. It is simultaneous. It responds to the totality of your state at once. That totality cannot be expressed in a sentence. It can only be felt as a sense of certainty, ease, or tension. The field reads that feeling directly. There is no intermediary. This is why you cannot think your way into collapse. Thinking happens after the signal has already been sent. When you attempt to use thought as the driver, you reverse the order of creation. You place the echo before the sound. This creates effort. Effort introduces noise. Noise weakens coherence. Reality is not persuaded by logic. It is mirrored through resonance. When your internal environment stabilizes, the external environment reflects that stability. Not because it agrees with you, but because it matches you. A mirror does not need convincing. It only needs something clear to reflect. This understanding changes how you relate to your inner experience. You stop trying to control thoughts and start noticing the state beneath them. You stop chasing emotional highs and begin valuing calm alignment. You recognize that certainty does not feel loud. It feels quiet, neutral, settled. When emotion, expectation, and identity are in agreement, thought becomes irrelevant. Action becomes natural. Timing becomes precise without planning. Reality responds before you can label what is happening, because the decision was made at a level deeper than words. This is not something to practice. It is something to recognize. The field has always been responding to you this way. The only difference now is that you are no longer mistaking the echo for the source. Readiness is not something that arrives later. It is not the result of accumulation, healing, fixing, or preparation. The idea of waiting to be ready is a misunderstanding of how reality responds. Waiting implies distance. Preparation implies lack. Gradual becoming implies that what you are now is insufficient. None of those states collapse reality. Readiness is a state, not a timeline. It is a frequency that is either active now or not active at all. The field does not measure progress. It does not track improvement. It responds to what is present. If readiness were something achieved over time, collapse would require duration. But collapse is instant, because readiness is instant. What you have been calling, not ready yet, is not a delay imposed by circumstances. It is an internal orientation toward the future. The moment consciousness leans forward, it exits the only point where selection can occur. The future is not where readiness lives. The future is a concept. Readiness lives in embodiment, and embodiment only happens now. This is why preparation can feel endless. There is always one more thing to learn, one more insight to integrate, one more block to clear. The identity of the one who is preparing never reaches readiness, because that identity is defined by not being there yet. Reality mirrors identity, not intention. As long as readiness is something you are moving toward, it cannot be reflected. True readiness has a distinct quality. It is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not seek confirmation. It feels like neutrality where there used to be urgency. It feels like steadiness where there used to be anticipation. This is not resignation. It is coherence. The inner argument has ended. You do not become ready by convincing yourself. You become ready when the nervous system stops scanning for what is missing. When nothing needs to happen for you to feel complete, the field reads that completeness as selection. Not because you earned it, but because there is no resistance left to keep alternatives open. Readiness is not confidence. Confidence can fluctuate. Readiness is not excitement. Excitement collapses quickly. Readiness is a settled knowing that does not require emotional charge. It is the sense that if nothing changed, you would still be whole. Paradoxically, that is when everything changes. The threshold you have been waiting to cross is not ahead of you. You are standing on it. The only thing that delays collapse is the habit of looking forward instead of inhabiting where you are. When awareness fully occupies the present without negotiating with the future, readiness stabilizes automatically. This is why some shifts happen when you stop trying. The effort to prepare relaxes, and coherence takes its place. In that coherence, reality no longer reads contradiction. There is no signal of almost. There is only, this is. You are not early. You are not late. You are not behind schedule. The idea of timing belongs to the mind. The field responds to state. And the state of readiness is not something you approach. It is something you recognize as already active when you stop postponing yourself. You are already positioned at the threshold. There is nowhere else to arrive. The mechanics of reality are not mysterious once the illusion of effort is removed. What feels complex only feels that way because the mind tries to insert itself as the operator. In truth, the field functions automatically. It does not wait for instructions. It does not need management. It is constantly selecting, collapsing, and reflecting based on coherence alone. At every moment, infinite versions of reality exist simultaneously. This is not philosophy. It is structure. Possibility is not created over time. It already exists as a field of potential. What you experience as your life is simply the version of that field you are currently aligned with. Nothing is summoned. Nothing is pulled in. A version is selected. The field does not respond to what you want. Desire is unstable. Desire contains lack. It contains orientation toward what is not present. The field cannot stabilize around that signal because it is self-contradictory. Instead, the field responds to coherence. Coherence is when your inner state is internally consistent. When who you are being, what you expect, and how you feel are not arguing with each other. Selection is not an active choice. This is crucial. You are not standing in front of infinite doors deciding which one to open. The moment you are coherent, you are already standing inside one of them. Selection happens passively as a consequence of alignment. The field simply reflects the state you are occupying. This is why effort often backfires. Effort implies movement towards something. Movement implies separation. Separation introduces multiple signals at once. One part of you says, I want, another says, I don't have, another says, I'm trying. The field reads all of it. It cannot collapse a clear version because there is no clear position being held. When coherence is present, selection happens without strain. You are not choosing a future. You are inhabiting a state. From that state, the corresponding version of reality becomes visible. Not because it was attracted, but because it was the only one that matched. The field is neutral. It does not reward positivity or punish negativity. It reflects structure. If your inner environment is stable, reality appears stable. If your inner environment is fragmented, reality appears delayed, chaotic, or inconsistent. The field is not reacting to events. It is responding to identity. This also explains why sudden shifts occur without warning. There is no build-up required. The moment coherence locks in, the field reorganizes. Probability collapses. What felt distant becomes immediate. What felt blocked becomes irrelevant. Not because something was removed, but because you are no longer aligned with the version where the block existed. You do not need to monitor the field. You do not need to manage selection. The mechanics are automatic. Your only relationship is with your state. When your state is settled, selection is inevitable. When your state is unstable, possibilities remain open. This reframes everything. You stop trying to decide outcomes and start noticing alignment. You stop chasing results and start stabilizing coherence. Not by forcing calm, but by allowing internal agreement. When the inner conversation quiets, the field has clarity. Reality is not waiting for your decision. It is already reflecting the position you are holding. The field does not choose for you. It mirrors you. And the moment you stop trying to select, selection completes itself. Emotion is not a reaction to what is happening. It is information about alignment. Long before the mind interprets an event, emotion has already registered the state you are occupying. This is why emotion changes faster than circumstances and why it is the most accurate signal you have. The field speaks through feeling because feeling is immediate. Emotion is data. It is not a command to act, suppress, fix, or express. It is feedback. Expansion and contraction are not good or bad states. They are indicators. Expansion signals internal coherence. Contraction signals internal contradiction. Nothing more. Nothing less. When you misinterpret emotion as something to manage, you miss its guidance entirely. Expansion feels like ease, openness, neutrality, clarity, or quiet certainty. It does not need excitement. It does not need intensity. Contraction feels like tightness, urgency, pressure, resistance, or restlessness. These sensations are not punishments. They are not obstacles. They are real-time information showing you whether your current state matches the version of reality you are selecting. The field does not send messages in words. It sends them in sensation. Emotion is the interface. When you move in a direction that aligns with your current identity, expansion occurs naturally. When you move in a direction that contradicts it, contraction appears immediately. This feedback is instant because it is not coming from the future. It is coming from coherence. Most confusion arises when emotion is treated as something that must be controlled. Control creates distortion. When you try to override contraction, you introduce another layer of resistance. When you chase expansion, you turn guidance into performance. Both approaches weaken clarity. Emotional awareness is not about changing what you feel. It is about listening to what is already being communicated. Navigation does not require force. It requires honesty. When contraction appears, it is not asking you to push through. It is asking you to notice misalignment. That misalignment could be an expectation, identity, timing, or attachment. The emotion itself does not specify which. It only flags the presence of contradiction. Your role is not to fix the feeling, but to recognize what it is revealing. Expansion does not mean you are right forever. It means you are aligned now. Contraction does not mean you are wrong. It means something in the signal is inconsistent. When emotion is understood this way, it loses its charge. You stop fearing negative states and stop clinging to positive ones. Both become useful. This is how emotion becomes navigation instead of reaction. You are no longer thrown by what you feel. You are informed by it. The body becomes an instrument, not a battlefield. The nervous system becomes an ally, not an obstacle. Clarity replaces self-judgment. When emotional guidance is respected, coherence stabilizes naturally. You stop overriding signals in the name of logic or desire. You stop gaslighting your own experience. The field responds quickly because the signal becomes clean. There is no internal argument. There is no suppression. There is awareness. This is not emotional mastery. It is emotional literacy. You are not here to dominate feeling. You are here to read it. Emotion is how the field keeps you oriented. When you listen without interference, navigation becomes effortless, and alignment stops being something you chase. Emotion has been guiding you the entire time. The only shift now is that you are no longer mistaking feedback for failure. Control prevents collapse because it fractures the signal. It introduces multiple instructions at once, each pulling in a different direction. Forcing says, this must happen. Effort says, it is not happening yet. Obsession says, I am watching for proof. The field reads all of it simultaneously. What it receives is not clarity, but noise. Control is not strength. It is mistrust. It is the internal posture that assumes reality will not respond unless it is monitored, pushed, or corrected. That assumption becomes part of the signal. The field mirrors it by delaying, resisting, or producing inconsistent outcomes. Not as punishment, but as reflection. When you try to force an outcome, you split yourself. One part is demanding change. Another part is noticing the absence of change. A third part is evaluating progress. This fragmentation collapses coherence. The field cannot select a stable version because no stable position is being held. Control keeps multiple timelines open at once. Effort feels productive, but energetically it signals incompletion. It broadcasts that something must be done for alignment to occur. The field responds accurately by continuing to present conditions that justify effort. The loop sustains itself. Not because effort is wrong, but because it contradicts completion. Allowing is structurally superior because it produces a single, clean signal. Allowing does not mean passivity. It means internal agreement. It means you are no longer arguing with the present moment. When resistance drops, coherence rises automatically. The field responds to that coherence without delay. Obsession is another form of control. Watching, checking, measuring, and scanning for signs all imply uncertainty. They say, I don't trust the signal to hold on its own. The field mirrors that uncertainty with instability. Outcomes fluctuate. Momentum stalls. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because the signal is constantly changing. Allowing removes interference. It does not try to manage timing. It does not attempt to correct reality. It rests in the assumption that alignment is already sufficient. That assumption is not intellectual. It is embodied. The nervous system relaxes. The inner conversation quiets. In that quiet, collapse becomes inevitable. Control is loud. Allowing is quiet. Control feels tense. Allowing feels neutral. This neutrality is often misinterpreted as doing nothing, but in reality it is doing the only thing that works. It removes contradiction. When there is no contradiction, the field has clarity. You cannot force coherence. You can only stop disrupting it. The moment you stop trying to make something happen, you remove the signal that it isn't happening. That removal is not a technique. It is a recognition. The field responds immediately because the interference is gone. This is why some shifts occur the moment you give up. Not because you surrendered your desire, but because you surrendered resistance. You stopped sending mixed instructions. You trusted the structure instead of micromanaging it. Control keeps you busy. Allowing makes you effective. The difference is not philosophical. It is mechanical. The field responds to clean signals. Allowing cleans the signal by ending the internal argument. Comment with the words, I am ready, to anchor this timeline. The present moment is not a concept to understand. It is the only location where reality can respond. This is not a philosophical preference. It is structural. Collapse does not occur in memory, and it does not occur in anticipation. It can only occur where identity is active, and identity is only active now. The past is informational. The future is imaginary. Neither contains creative power. When attention rests in memory, reality cannot move because the signal is already complete. When attention reaches into anticipation, reality cannot stabilize because the signal is not yet embodied. The present moment is the interface where probability meets identity. It is the only point where selection can finalize. Collapse requires presence because presence is where coherence exists. When awareness is fragmented across time, coherence dissolves. Part of you is referencing what was. Another part is projecting what might be. The field reads both. It receives contradiction. In that contradiction, probabilities remain open. Nothing locks in. This is why effort often feels exhausting without producing change. Effort usually lives in the future. It assumes something must happen later for alignment to occur. That assumption removes attention from the present. Without attention here, identity is not fully occupied. Without full occupation, collapse cannot complete. The present moment is not passive. It is not stillness for its own sake. It is fullness of occupancy. When you are fully here, you are not negotiating with time. You are not asking when. You are not checking how long. You are simply being. That being is the signal. Identity is not a story you tell yourself. It is the state you inhabit. The moment you are fully present, identity stabilizes. When identity stabilizes, probability aligns. This alignment does not require visualization. It does not require affirmation. It happens automatically because the field now has a clear reference point. Anticipation delays collapse because it suggests that fulfillment exists somewhere else. Memory delays collapse because it anchors identity to what no longer exists. Both remove you from the only place where reality can respond. The present moment is not a waiting room. It is the creation point. This is why clarity often arrives when you stop thinking about the outcome. Attention returns to now. The inner conversation quiets. The nervous system settles. In that settling, identity becomes whole. The field responds because there is finally something stable to reflect. Being present does not mean disengaging from life. It means disengaging from time as a psychological construct. You still act. You still move. But action arises from alignment instead of urgency. Movement happens without pulling the mind forward or backward. The present moment is where selection becomes final. Not because you decided, but because there is no longer any contradiction in where you are standing. When you are fully here, you are not split. When you are not split, reality mirrors wholeness. You do not need to hold the present moment. You cannot. You only need to stop leaving it. The habit of leaving is subtle. It feels like planning, remembering, analyzing. None of those are wrong. But none of them collapse reality. Collapse is not an event you wait for. It is what happens when awareness stops drifting and settles completely into now. In that settling, identity and probability meet. And when they meet, the field has no choice but to respond. Waiting keeps timelines open because it withholds embodiment. It is not neutral. It is an active state of non-selection. When you wait, you are not resting in certainty. You are hovering between possibilities, observing them without committing your identity to any one of them. The field reads that hesitation precisely and responds by keeping all options unresolved. A timeline collapses only when it is occupied. Occupation does not mean action. It means internal certainty. Waiting communicates that certainty has not been claimed yet. It suggests that something external must happen first. That suggestion becomes part of the signal. The field mirrors it by delaying resolution. Hesitation sustains potential. This is why waiting often feels heavy or stagnant. Potential without selection requires energy to maintain. It keeps the nervous system alert, scanning, anticipating. Nothing finalizes because finalization requires embodiment. As long as you are waiting, you are not fully inside any version of reality. You are standing at the intersection, holding the door open. Waiting is often mistaken for patience, but they are not the same. Patience is calm presence without urgency. Waiting is deferred identity. Patience occupies the present fully. Waiting leans forward. The field responds to the lean, not the language used to justify it. Decisiveness is not a mental decision. It is an internal state where identity stops oscillating. It feels like settling into a chair instead of hovering above it. When decisiveness is present, there is no internal debate. The outcome may not be visible yet, but the position is held. That holding collapses the timeline. This is why overthinking prolongs uncertainty. Thinking reopens options that were already closing. Each reconsideration sends a new instruction. The field cannot finalize because the signal keeps changing. Waiting keeps the signal in motion. Collapse requires stillness. Waiting often hides behind logic. It says, "I'll be ready when conditions are right." But conditions do not produce readiness. Readiness produces conditions. When you wait for the outside to confirm the inside, you reverse the order of creation. The field reflects that reversal by withholding confirmation. Embodying certainty does not mean you know every step. It means you are no longer negotiating with alternatives. Alternatives lose relevance when identity settles. The field responds to relevance. What is no longer relevant stops appearing. This does not require force. It requires honesty. Are you occupying a state, or are you observing it? Observation keeps distance. Occupation closes it. The moment you stop watching for signs and start being the state you were waiting to confirm, the signal stabilizes. Waiting also creates the illusion of safety. It feels cautious, responsible, measured. But energetically, it is avoidance of embodiment. It postpones consequence. Collapse brings consequence. Not punishment, but commitment. Once a timeline collapses, you live inside it. Waiting delays that responsibility. Decisiveness is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not demand reassurance. It simply stops wavering. When wavering ends, the field has clarity. It no longer needs to hold multiple possibilities in play. You are not required to rush. You are required to inhabit. The moment you fully inhabit a state without checking for permission, the timeline responds. Waiting dissolves not when you push forward, but when you stop standing between versions of yourself. Timelines close when identity settles. As long as you wait, they remain open. The moment you stop waiting, selection completes itself. Recognition is the trigger because recognition ends the search. Collapse does not occur when something is built, repeated, or convinced into existence. It occurs when something is seen as already true. The moment recognition happens, the internal signal shifts from seeking to knowing. That shift finalizes selection. Recognition is not belief. Belief still contains doubt. Belief needs reinforcement. Belief asks for evidence. Recognition does none of that. Recognition is immediate and self-validating. It does not argue. It does not negotiate. It simply sees. When something is recognized, it no longer needs to happen in the future. It is already placed in the present. This is why visualization is optional. Repetition is optional. Affirmation is optional. None of them cause collapse on their own. They only appear to work when they accidentally produce recognition. When they do not, they create effort without result. The technique is never the trigger. The moment of recognition is. Recognition feels like remembering. Not remembering a detail, but remembering a state. There is often a quiet familiarity to it. A sense of course. No excitement. No rush. Just a settling. That settling is coherence. The field responds because there is no longer a question being asked. When you are trying to achieve something, you are signaling that it is not true yet. That signal keeps the timeline open. Achievement implies distance. Recognition collapses distance. It brings the state into identity. Once it is part of identity, reality reorganizes around it naturally. This is why some shifts feel sudden and unearned. There was no visible build-up because the work was never cumulative. The only thing that changed was perception. The moment perception aligned with what was already possible, the field responded instantly. Nothing new was created. What already existed was selected. Recognition cannot be forced. You cannot decide to recognize something. It happens when resistance drops enough for clarity to surface. This is why effort often delays it. Effort tries to manufacture certainty instead of allowing it to emerge. Recognition emerges in stillness, not striving. When recognition occurs, the body relaxes. The mind quiets. The nervous system stops scanning. These are not causes. They are indicators. They show that the internal argument has ended. With no argument, there is no conflicting signal. Collapse completes itself. This also explains why repeating something you do not recognize as true feels hollow. The words may be correct, but the state is not present. The field responds to the state. Until recognition lands, repetition only reinforces lack. It keeps pointing to what is not yet embodied. Recognition does not require proof. Proof follows recognition, not the other way around. When you wait for evidence before recognizing, you are placing reality in charge of your state. That reverses the relationship. Recognition reclaims authorship. It says, "This is true because it is seen." The field mirrors that authority. You are not here to convince yourself of anything. You are here to notice what has already become inevitable at the level of identity. The moment you see it without effort, without doubt, without anticipation, the trigger is pulled. Collapse is not dramatic. It is decisive. It happens when recognition replaces seeking. When remembering replaces trying. When identity quietly accepts what was always available. That acceptance is the trigger. Identity is not a label you assign to yourself. It is the position you are occupying in the field right now. This matters because reality does not respond to what you want to experience. It responds to who you are being. Timelines are not pulled toward you. They are entered through identity. A timeline is not a future destination. It is a state of reality that already exists. Infinite versions are available simultaneously, each corresponding to a different configuration of identity. You do not attract these versions through effort or desire. You make them visible by occupying the identity that matches them. Visibility is the effect. Identity is the cause. This is why two people can want the same outcome and experience completely different results. Wanting does not select a timeline. Identity does. Identity is the container that holds expectations, assumptions, emotional baselines, and self-concept. The field reads that container as a whole. It does not isolate individual thoughts. It reflects the total configuration. When identity shifts, reality does not need to be changed. You simply stop perceiving the version that no longer matches. A new version becomes obvious, not because it was summoned, but because it is now relevant. Relevance determines visibility. Identity determines relevance. This reframes manifestation entirely. You are not here to convince reality to give you something. You are here to notice which version of yourself you are inhabiting. From that version, the corresponding reality unfolds naturally. The timeline does not move toward you. You move into alignment with it. Identity operates beneath conscious intention. You can want abundance while identifying as someone who must struggle. You can desire connection while identifying as someone who expects distance. The field responds to identity, not desire. This is not punishment. It is consistency. Changing identity is not about adopting a new story. Stories are superficial. Identity changes when internal assumptions shift without effort. When you stop bracing for disappointment. When you stop expecting delay. When you stop referencing past limitations as proof. These shifts are subtle, but they are decisive. Once identity stabilizes, the timeline stabilizes with it. Reality does not test you. It does not challenge your worthiness. It simply reflects the container you are standing in. If the container changes, the reflection changes automatically. This is why trying to change circumstances without addressing identity leads to temporary results. Circumstances are downstream. Identity is upstream. When identity remains the same, the field eventually reasserts the familiar timeline. Not because progress was lost, but because coherence returned to its baseline. Occupying a new identity does not require pretending. Pretending creates internal resistance. Occupation is quieter. It feels like neutrality replacing tension. Expectation softening into assumption. When something is assumed without emotional charge, it has already been integrated into identity. You do not need to ask which timeline you are on. You are always on one. The question is whether the identity you are inhabiting is the one you intend to occupy. The field has already answered. It is showing you. Timelines do not need to be chased. They need to be matched. When identity aligns, visibility shifts. What was once distant becomes immediate. What was once unavailable becomes ordinary. Not because something was added, but because something was inhabited. Identity chooses the timeline by being it. You do not shift reality. You shift position within it. This distinction removes an enormous amount of unnecessary strain. Reality does not need to be changed, corrected, or improved. It already contains every version. What changes is where you are standing in relation to those versions. When manifestation is misunderstood, it feels like a job. Something to manage. Something to maintain. Responsibility fatigue sets in because it feels like everything depends on constant focus and effort. This fatigue is a sign that the framework is incorrect. You were never meant to move the world. You were meant to move yourself. The field is already complete. It is not waiting for instructions. It is not missing components. It is not broken. When you attempt to change reality, you imply that something is wrong with it. That implication becomes part of your signal. The field mirrors that by presenting problems to fix. Relocation is effortless because it does not fight what exists. It simply changes reference. Imagine standing in a room with many windows, each showing a different landscape. You do not alter the landscapes by walking to a different window. You change what you see by changing where you stand. Reality works the same way. Position is determined by identity, expectation, and emotional baseline. When these shift, perception shifts. When perception shifts, experience shifts. Nothing external needs to be pushed. Nothing needs to be removed. You stop encountering the versions of reality that no longer match your position. This is why trying to make things happen often creates burnout. It places you in opposition to the field. You become the one responsible for outcomes. That responsibility is heavy because it was never yours. The field responds automatically to position. When you take responsibility for movement that is automatic, effort replaces ease. Effortlessness does not mean disengagement. It means alignment. Action still occurs, but it arises naturally from the position you are in. You are not acting to change reality. You are acting because action is the natural expression of where you are standing. There is no friction in that movement. When you understand relocation, guilt dissolves. You no longer feel pressure to think perfectly, feel perfectly, or act perfectly. You realize that small shifts in position are sufficient. A softened expectation. A released assumption. A dropped resistance. These are relocations, not tasks. Reality does not resist relocation. Resistance only appears when you try to drag the field instead of moving within it. The moment you stop pushing against what is and allow your position to adjust, the reflection changes on its own. This understanding restores trust. You trust the field to do what it does best, respond. You trust yourself to notice when position feels strained and when it feels settled. You stop micromanaging outcomes and start listening to alignment. When position shifts, timing resolves itself. You do not need to orchestrate sequences. You find yourself in the right place at the right moment without effort. This is not luck. It is coherence expressing itself. You were never meant to carry the weight of creation. Creation is structural. Your role is positional. When you shift position, reality updates automatically. Nothing is wrong with the world you see. It is simply the view from where you are standing. Move the position, and the view changes. Stability collapses reality more reliably than intensity because the field responds to consistency, not peaks. Emotional spikes are loud, but they are brief. They surge and fall, sending mixed instructions over time. Calm coherence, by contrast, sends the same signal continuously. The field does not respond to how strongly something is felt in a moment. It responds to what is sustained. Intensity often feels powerful because it is noticeable. Excitement, urgency, passion, and emotional highs create a sense of momentum. But momentum without stability dissipates. The field reads intensity as fluctuation. One moment the signal says yes, the next it says maybe, then it says where is it? This oscillation keeps timelines unstable. Calm coherence feels unremarkable to the mind. It lacks drama. There is no rush, no spike, no surge of anticipation. But energetically, it is precise. Calm coherence means the nervous system is settled, expectations are steady, and identity is no longer reaching. This steadiness tells the field that the position is occupied and will not be abandoned. Emotional highs often hide a subtle form of seeking. There is excitement because something is hoped for. Hope implies uncertainty. Uncertainty keeps selection open. The field mirrors that openness by delaying finalization. This is why chasing high-frequency emotions becomes exhausting. Each peak requires another peak to sustain the signal, and collapse keeps slipping away. Stability removes the chase. When your internal state becomes calm and consistent, there is nothing to maintain. You are not trying to hold a feeling. You are simply being. This being does not fluctuate dramatically, so the field has a clear reference point. Over time, that reference point becomes dominant, and reality aligns accordingly. This does not mean suppressing emotion. It means no longer depending on emotion to create results. Expansion can be present without intensity. Certainty can be present without excitement. Alignment often feels neutral because there is no internal argument. The mind mislabels this neutrality as boredom or stagnation, but energetically it is clarity. Stability is what allows timelines to hold. Intensity can initiate awareness, but stability completes selection. Without stability, even dramatic shifts revert back to baseline. With stability, subtle shifts compound. The field responds not to what you feel once, but to what you consistently embody. This is why long-term change often comes quietly. There is no moment to celebrate. No surge to announce. Life simply reorganizes. Opportunities appear without tension. Movement feels natural. This is not a lack of power. It is power without friction. When stability replaces intensity, trust deepens. You stop needing emotional confirmation that something is working. You stop checking how you feel as evidence. You allow reality to update on its own timeline because your state is no longer conditional. The chase for highs keeps attention on experience instead of identity. Stability returns attention to being. Identity stabilizes, and with it, the timeline stabilizes. What was once effortful becomes ordinary. What was once exciting becomes obvious. The field does not require you to feel amazing. It requires you to be consistent. Calm coherence is consistency. It is the quiet confidence of a state that does not need reinforcement. When you stop trying to generate intensity and allow stability to take its place, collapse becomes reliable. Not because you are doing more, but because you have stopped fluctuating. Reality responds to who stays, not who surges. Stability holds the signal. And what is held is what becomes real. Consciousness is the foundation that makes every experience possible. Before any outcome appears, before any emotion arises, before any thought forms, there is awareness itself. This is not an abstract idea. It is the position from which the field responds. When this is overlooked, life feels like something you are managing. When it is recognized, life reveals itself as something you are witnessing from within. You are not a person attempting to influence reality. That identity creates strain because it places you outside the field, trying to manipulate it from the edges. The field does not respond to effort from a separate self. It responds to the state of the observer. When you identify as the observer rather than the actor, coherence deepens automatically. Awareness is neutral. It does not chase outcomes. It does not resist circumstances. It simply perceives. This neutrality is not passive. It is powerful because it contains no contradiction. The moment awareness rests in itself without trying to change what is observed, the signal becomes clean. The field responds to that cleanliness. Most tension comes from confusing awareness with the contents of awareness. Thoughts, emotions, sensations, and roles are all observed. They are not the observer. When identity collapses into these contents, reality feels unstable because the observer position keeps shifting. When identity returns to awareness itself, stability returns. The field responds to the observer because the observer determines what is relevant. Awareness does not force relevance. It reveals it. Whatever is held in awareness without resistance becomes coherent. Whatever is resisted becomes noisy. The field mirrors this distinction exactly. This is why effort decreases when awareness is recognized. There is no longer a need to push or pull reality. Awareness does not try to do anything. It allows. That allowing is not permission. It is recognition that nothing is separate enough to require control. When you rest as the observer, identity loosens its grip on outcomes. Desire softens. Fear quiets. Expectations become lighter. Not because they were resolved, but because awareness does not cling to them. In this state, reality reorganizes because there is no longer an attempt to manage it. Being the observer does not mean disengaging from life. Actions still occur. Decisions still happen. But they arise from clarity instead of compulsion. You are no longer acting to get somewhere. You are responding from where you already are. The field reflects awareness because awareness is stable. Roles change. Emotions fluctuate. Circumstances shift. Awareness remains. When identity stabilizes at this level, the field finally has a consistent reference point. That consistency collapses probability naturally. This is the shift from doing to being. From influencing to allowing. From trying to create to recognizing what is already unfolding. Awareness does not need to be improved. It does not need to be expanded. It simply needs to be noticed as what you already are. When you stop identifying as the one inside the experience and recognize yourself as the space in which the experience occurs, effort dissolves. The field responds because the observer is no longer fragmented. You were never meant to manage reality. You were meant to witness it from coherence. The moment you remember this, the relationship reverses. Reality stops feeling heavy. The field begins to respond with ease. You are the observer the field responds to, because the observer determines the state. And the state determines everything. Seeking sustains separation because it assumes distance. The moment you seek, you place what you want somewhere else, sometime later, outside of your current state. That assumption becomes the signal. The field responds accurately by keeping the experience just out of reach. Not as denial, but as reflection. Seeking feels active, even noble, but energetically it is a declaration that something is missing now. It keeps identity oriented toward absence. As long as absence is part of the signal, collapse cannot complete. The field keeps responding with more searching, more questions, more pathways that never quite arrive. When seeking ends, something profound happens in the nervous system. The constant forward lean relaxes. The scanning stops. The subtle tension that was holding attention in the future dissolves. This is not resignation. It is release. The release of the idea that fulfillment is elsewhere. Collapse becomes immediate when seeking dissolves because there is no longer any resistance in the signal. Resistance does not always look like pushing away. Often it looks like reaching toward. Both imply separation. When reaching ends, separation ends. The field no longer needs to maintain distance. Stillness is not inactivity. It is the absence of internal motion. When the inner movement towards something stops, coherence stabilizes. The body settles. Breath deepens. Awareness becomes wide instead of pointed. This state is not created. It is revealed when effort ceases. Seeking also fragments attention. Part of you is here, part of you is looking ahead, part of you is evaluating progress. The field reads fragmentation as instability. When seeking ends, attention returns to one place. Identity consolidates. The signal becomes singular. This is why answers often arrive when you stop asking. Why clarity appears when you stop analyzing. Why solutions surface when you give up trying to solve. The moment seeking drops, awareness becomes receptive instead of directive. Receptivity allows reorganization without friction. The nervous system has been conditioned to equate stillness with danger or stagnation. It expects effort to be required. When seeking ends, there can be a moment of unfamiliar quiet. This quiet is not emptiness. It is readiness. It is the absence of interference. In this quiet, the field does not need to be managed. It updates on its own. Timelines align because there is no longer a competing instruction pulling them open. What felt delayed suddenly feels inevitable. Not because something was added, but because something was removed. Seeking tries to get somewhere. Stillness reveals where you already are. Collapse happens in revelation, not pursuit. The more you chase, the more reality keeps running ahead. The moment you stop, it catches up. This does not mean you stop caring. It means care is no longer tied to outcome. Desire can still exist, but it is no longer projected into the future. It is held lightly in the present. That lightness removes resistance. When seeking ends, trust replaces effort. Trust is not belief. It is the absence of contradiction. In trust, there is nothing to prove, nothing to monitor, nothing to chase. The field reads this as completion. Collapse is immediate not because you did something right, but because you stopped doing what was keeping it from happening. Stillness is not the goal. It is the doorway. And the moment you stop reaching for the doorway, you realize you have already walked through. This is the moment it locks in because nothing is being added anymore. Nothing is being reached for. Nothing is being prepared. What needed to fall away has already fallen away. What remains is presence without negotiation. Identity without tension. Awareness without movement. This is not a transition point. It is a stabilization. There is no next step because there is no longer a gap to cross. The mind often looks for a conclusion that feels dramatic, but collapse is quiet. It feels like inevitability settling into place. Not excitement. Not relief. Certainty without commentary. The kind that does not need reinforcement. At this point, recognition is complete. Not recognition of an idea, but recognition of a state. You are not watching something approach. You are not waiting for confirmation. The internal posture that once leaned forward has stopped. Attention is fully here. Identity is no longer referencing a future version of itself. This is how collapse finalizes. Not through action, but through stillness. Not through effort, but through occupancy. You are fully where you are, without mentally relocating yourself somewhere else. That full occupancy is what the field responds to. It always has been. Notice there is nothing to fix right now. No adjustment required. No emotional tone that needs to be held. No thought that needs to be corrected. The absence of requirement is the signal. When nothing is required, nothing is resisted. When nothing is resisted, coherence is absolute. The collapse is not something that will happen later as a result of this recognition. It is already underway because recognition has already replaced seeking. The field does not wait once coherence is stable. It reorganizes quietly, often invisibly at first, because the reference point has changed. This is why there is no instruction here. Instructions imply movement toward something. There is nowhere to move. There is only staying. Staying with this neutrality. Staying with this simplicity. Staying without checking whether it is working. The nervous system can rest here. There is no alertness required. No scanning. No anticipation. What was once effort has resolved into ease. What was once complexity has resolved into clarity. This clarity does not feel special. It feels ordinary. That ordinariness is the sign that identity has integrated. You may notice a subtle sense of finality, not as an ending, but as a locking. Like a door closing without force. Like a decision that no longer needs to be revisited. This is not rigidity. It is resolution. The internal debate has ended. From here, reality does what it does best. It reflects. Not because it was commanded to, but because there is finally something consistent to mirror. You do not need to watch for evidence. Watching reopens the loop. Let the field handle expression. Your role is finished. There is nothing mystical happening in the future. There is only coherence stabilizing now. And that stabilization is enough. Stay here. Not as a practice. As a recognition. Share this with someone who needs to hear it before their timeline closes.